Today's October 9th community meeting. We're excited to be here with, we'll be having Sean Brennen to talk a little bit about all the excitement that has been happening over San Francisco Blockchain Week and the some impressive hacks that he judged. Rich, do you want to go on with some updates?
Sure. I talked for 10 minutes before we pressed record, so I kind of wasted all my good sound bites. But today's going to be a bit shambolic because, like Jess said, the community groups kind of in the thick of the San Francisco Blockchain Week, and people that aren't there are busy planning Prague Blockchain Week, which Blockchain Weeks never end. So there's not a lot happening on the online front. Things have been fairly quiet the last couple of weeks, which is nice, I guess. Every once in a while, for things to be quiet at MakerDAO. There have been some interesting developments, though. We've seen some interesting price action with the Maker token, and we've been having conversations trying to figure out exactly why that's the case, and nobody seems to have a really clear answer. I think that frequently there never is a single reason why these things happen. It's probably accumulating inertia from 5 or 6 different things, but we've found a tremendous amount of news over the course of the last week, especially around the A16Z announcement. And I think that just created enough interest where the Augur announcement as well sort of might have kickstarted something, which leads me into the second thing I wanted to talk about. Is this is kind of big for us. It's big for everybody. It's big for the ecosystem. Augur is coming out with version 2 of their platform, and they've been receiving a bit of criticism here and there about their first iteration, which I find a significant amount of sympathy with them, because we're kind of in the same boat. MakerDAO builds things and releases them, and then we iterate. And our first iteration wasn't pretty either, but it worked and everybody loved it. And I think the same thing is going to happen with Augur, which is great. But the major announcement is that Augur is going to be supporting DAI as a stablecoin, which is huge in the prediction market space. And I think it's good for everybody, especially, well, even more good for MakerDAO. So that's exciting news. Other than that, though, there's not a lot to talk about in the online world. And as just mentioned, we'll be hearing from Sean, but Nik is also here as well, and he's going to be giving us a presentation that he made for San Francisco about oracles and price feeds and how they work at MakerDAO, with some interesting tidbits about the future, which I'm looking forward to. Actually, I'm going to talk about this as well. Mariano, you want to, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you had a great idea about a future segment that we can have for these meetings too. If you want to give us a little recap of that.
Sure, Rich. I guess that starting next week, we can do a section on the community call called the Burning Question, where we can gather some questions around the community that might not be entirely related to Maker. Also, it can be from Ethereum blockchain or maybe blockchains. And we can discuss a bit here so we can extend conversation topics of our call, and hopefully more people get into the conversation, right?
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that we'll definitely start that off next week. And that was a good suggestion you made too. So we should probably poll people, maybe ask a week ahead if they have any questions, or they can add them to maybe the weekly discussion thread in Reddit. So whatever the major topic is, people can suggest questions to be debated on the next call, and then we can pick one of those. I think it'd be great to have a little round table. Maybe cool. we can dig into mysteries of the day, like why is Maker mooning kind of thing, and maybe get what the community's perspective is on that as well. I love it. Sure. Mariano, do you have anything else happening in the community or in the South America that you'd like to keep us up to date on?
No, as I told you, I guess last week, we had Colombia Hackathon next week. We will having a happy hour too after the event closes on October 18. We will announce where it's going to be, where it's taking place. What else? Well, nothing much from our side. We have a couple of business development meetings here in the continent to start on the integration on exchanges.
Yeah, sounds good. How's the economy in Argentina? Is it getting any worse? Are you all right?
Now it's kind of like in a standby. Dollar is getting depreciated at this moment. I don't know why. Maybe it's like, as I heard on the news, a thing that is happening on the emerging markets right now, except for Turkey. But besides that, it's just like a standby economy because we have one, as you already know, a lot of inflation. But the worst thing about that is that we have like all the industries are like stopped right now. They are not growing at all. In fact, they are like decreasing in terms of productivity and job availability. So it's not the best the best environment right now in Argentina.
Wow. Yeah, I feel for you guys. It's a tough situation. I hope things work out all right. But
Yeah, I know it's a tough situation, but if you talk with people on the street, it's like people is already used to it. It's kind of weird too.
yeah, but hopefully things will improve soon. If not, then I guess we'll be ready to take over with DAI. And everything will be all
Hopefully,
right. As easy as that.
we will have news pretty soon.
All right. Micah, do you want to give us a recap of some of the interesting things that have been going on with you?
Again, I was muted. Sorry. Yes. Last week we had stablecoin event. There was a post out about it just recently, and we also had a recap of Tech Barbecue, where we had a visit by Crown Prince. I can paste the links in, and we will have event on this Thursday at Danish Technical University called High Tech Summit, where Rune will be speaking. Rune has spoken on 2 events last week, and and also Crown Prince. That was him who welcomed him. So I will paste the links in the chat, and basically my busiest area at the moment are preparations for Prague Blockchain Week, which is a number of different events that will take place by the end of October and beginning of November. And this is something that more of us community leads are involved in.
So the Prague Blockchain Week is kind of the premier event of the year, I think. So what's Maker going to be doing there? What events are we going to, and where are we going to be represented?
Yes, Jessica or Rich, feel free to fill me in if I forget anything. But I guess we will begin with Status Hackathon that will be themed Crypto Life, which we are sponsoring, tier 1 sponsor. So we look forward to have a presentation and be part of the hackathons, be there welcoming people at our stand as well, and discussing some real everyday use life hacks. So we really hope that this will contribute to the adoption of DAI stablecoin for the users.
That's going to be a cool event too, because we're sharing the venue with some other interesting events at the time. So Council of Prague was going to be happening in the building as well. So the ETH magicians will be there talking about EIPs and ERCs.
It will be the next day.
Yeah, and we'll talk about specific dates, I guess, later. And also Swarm Fest, or I can't remember what the Swarm conference is going to be happening in the building as well. And the last major event is escaping me, but there's going to be a lot of activity in the building with us during those few days. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. I think you covered it well. I think those were the two events that will happen subsequently after the Crypto Life Hackathon is finished. It takes place from the 26th to 28th in National House. On the 29th, we have another event where Maker is participating. It's a DeFi summit. There has been a version of DeFi summit in San Francisco that Jessica was part of, right? Maybe you want to say something?
Yeah, so DeFi was something that we participated in earlier this week, the sort of first DeFi ever, and that was in SF. And in Prague, they're doing it again. It was really successful. We have Nik on the call who actually did a talk on oracles, and he can talk a little bit about it too. But
yeah, DeFi is really exciting. I think that it's a good look for us. I think that we go to these conferences, and it's not always we don't always have parity with the people that we're there with. So it could be anything in the crypto space, but we're sort of this juggernaut of finance. And with the DeFi event, it's other organizations in the decentralized finance space, which is really exciting. So at San Francisco, I think there's some big ones like Harbor, Didix. Who else was there? Wire was there. So it's a chance for us to sit down and have chats, fireside chats, and do panels with other organizations that are building the cryptographic primitives that we're building. So figuring out how we can place all our puzzle pieces together to make this open finance thing happen. So it's a pretty exciting event for us, I think. Linka, what's for DeFi?
Yeah, I also like about DeFi that it's like a zero bullshit conference or event. So I like that angle to that. Afterwards, we have DEF CON from the October 30th until November 2nd in Prague Congress Center. And that's the key event for Prague.
It's gonna be the big one.
Blockchain Week. Oh yes, I forgot one thing. We are planning another DAI Happy Hour or Happy Hour on the 28th. Venue to be announced.
I think we're getting famous for these things. All right, so that's probably Blockchain Week. So it's going to be a lot of things happening for a long time, and then hopefully there's no more conferences ever again after that. We'll see how it goes. Probably not. All right, Linka, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I guess I'll just paste the links, and I don't want to steal the attention from our special guests. Looking forward to hear what you guys have to say.
All right, Nick, what's your cue? Do you want to kick us off with a little talk about Oracle?
Okay, yeah, sure. Give me a minute to get set up here. Okay. Yeah, so I guess in the meantime, decentralized finance was already mentioned. It was kind of organized by the Dharma guys.
You had a talk, right?
Yeah, so I had actually had two. So I had one talk on oracles and price feeds, and kind of talking about how we've architected our oracles in the past, what we're kind of working on in that domain right now, and how in the future that stack might evolve into something even crazier. So kind of the talk was kind of titled, oracles, look into the past, present, and future. Okay, so I think I have it pulled up here. Give me a second.
It's weird how oracles sort of are on this cyclical sort of level of interest every once in a while. Like a year ago, that was going to be the way that blockchain actually succeeded in the real world, and then people sort of stopped talking about it. And then somehow we arose as sort of being a leader in the space. I shouldn't say somehow, through the keen intellect of Nick and Mariano and the rest of the team, we've emerged as sort of leaders in this oracle space, which is really cool.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So I this was, the format of this was very interactive. They wanted it much less to be some guy standing up there speaking to people, and much more of an interactive kind of asking questions, kind of feeling people out, and kind of having this progress kind of organically. Not something I was very used to, but I tried to adapt. And so people threw out some interesting kind of definitions, and here's what we kind of settled on was that oracles enable dApps to utilize off-chain information on-chain, and the reason that we need them is because a blockchain smart contract cannot kind of communicate with the wider web, like the internet. So any kind of needs to be transported onto the blockchain first before that information can then be utilized. And so, At Maker, the obvious use case for us is price feed. And so kind of this term Oracle gets thrown around a lot, and kind of people seem to interpret it differently. So I think it's always very good to be very specific in what something means. And so when I think of an Oracle, I think of kind of two components. I think of a off-chain component, which is kind of sourcing all of this information, publishing it on-chain. And then there is the on-chain component, which is the smart contract that is then holding the data that everyone on the blockchain, all the dApps, can then query to get that data. So I like to call the off-chain the broadcaster and the on-chain the relayer. But these are by no means industry standard norms. This is just kind of how I like to look at it. And so this was once again, talking with the audience, what are oracles used for? They're very good at tracking any kind of numerical quantity, anything that is very objective and not subjective. So you can imagine for Maker, stuff like price data of an asset, volume, growth in some kind of statistic or metric, attestation to something. So attesting whether an event occurred on the presidency or he did not. There was a global settlement on this day. There was not a global settlement on this day. Or proving that that something exists. So some kind of document or record. And there's a third thing which is not quite as well known. A lot of people would kind of look kind of funny when you say this, but you can query off-chain APIs through oracles. It's a little bit convoluted, but what basically you do is you call a function in the smart contract which will emit some kind of event, and the event will contain all of the parameters that you want to pass to some API. There will be some kind of bot that is then listening for events. We'll see that particular event that was broadcast and take those parameters, plug it into the API, get the information, and then very same smart contract that it was queried from. And this is how smart contracts can literally pull information in real time from an off-chain API. So kind of, what are the challenges related to oracles? Well, there's quite a few. I like to narrow it down to these four: trust, security, latency, and cost. So in terms of trust, you have to trust kind of the where the prices are coming from. You have to trust the entire infrastructure, that it's coded correctly, that there's no way for some kind of third party to interject or to kind of do a hostile takeover, right? If you have a data source and no one trusts it, then it's a useless data source. Security, right? Stuff like, is this hackable? Can someone compromise this? Can someone manipulate the data? Can someone manipulate the way that this data is collected, processed, and distributed in a way where they can force the price or force the data in some direction, right? And there's latency, right? So when a price is seen, how long does it take to get on chain? If you see a price on chain, how fresh is that price? So kind of liveness, and the last one is cost, right? So every Ethereum transaction, right, costs gas. So if you do a lot of Ethereum transactions, you're going to be spending a lot of money. And so one thing to note is that latency and costs are kind of interrelated here. So if you want to have less latency, that means if you want to have less time in between each of these price updates, it's going to be more. You need to do more transactions. And if you have a higher tolerance for latency, if you are willing to say, this price can stay valid for half an hour, well, okay, now you only need to send one transaction every hour or every half hour, right? So what's wrong?
Can I jump in for a second? Where would you put reliability of the off-chain data sources? What if the source goes away? Which category would that fall in?
Sounds like trust.
Yeah, that's included under the trust model, and you'll see later in the presentation that I actually go into that specifically. So this is kind of how we have done oracles in the past. So this is what's running for single collateral DAI right now. And so what you'll see is we have some price sources. These are not the only price sources we query, but for the sake of having the diagram be clean, these are the three I chose. And then you'll see these. So these are all individuals who are running a Setzer price bot at the moment. So these fill kind of the broadcaster role I was talking about earlier. And what they do is they take the price from all of these sources, and they take the median, and then they publish this median to their kind of feed contract. So this is the relayer component that I was talking about. And these feed contracts are very, very simple. The only one who can update them is the specific feed that they have, one little data structure to put in the data, as well as a timestamp of when that data was published, and then just kind of read-write methods to read that data or write new data. So part of when you update these feed contracts is that the medianizer gets poked. What the medianizer does is it pulls all of the data values from all of the different feed contracts and takes the median from them. This value from the medianizer is then fed into the Oracle security module. Note that this is only for MKR at the moment. We're not using this for the Ethereum price feed. And what the Oracle security module is basically just a delay. Excuse me. And that delay kind of helps us to protect against any kind of Oracle attack. So let's say the broadcasters colluded into broadcasting a bad price. And you could, for example, say that the price of Ethereum is $1 trillion, right? And then you can mint unlimited amounts of DAI, right, with just one ETH. Or separate attack could be you set the price of ETH to 0, and now everyone's CDP gets liquidated, right? Equally bad. And so what the Oracle security module does is any guardian can go and basically either invalidate that price or globally settle the whole system before anyone is affected by that price. And so this has worked well, but it has a lot of drawbacks. So every time any of the broadcasters are updating their feed contract, right, it's a one transaction, right? And on top of that, not only does it just update the feed contract, right, it triggers the medianizer to have to call all of the other feed contracts, right, which is an external contract call, which is very, very expensive in terms of gas. Then it needs to collect to get the median of those prices. In order to get the median of something, you need to sort the prices first in order from least to greatest, and then you kind of just pop in on the ends one by one till you reach the median value. Sorting is a very expensive operation in terms of gas. For those of you who are kind of computer science whizzes, we say that sorting is n log n, and the blockchain does not really do well with any kinds of actions that scale by n log n. Blockchain does much better with kind of constant time operations. That means that no matter how big the input is, it will always get done in the same amount of time. versus n log n. As the input n gets larger and larger and larger, the amount of resources / time you need to do that action gets more and more and more expensive. Another drawback about this kind of architecture is that, so we just talked about that it has very high cost, but it can also have very low reliability when the Ethereum kind of mainnet network is very congested. Right, there are periods when the gas price goes up to 30, 45, 60 GWay, and the cost during those periods of updating oracles is not really the only problem. Right, you can have so many transactions in the mempool, for example, that an oracle's feeds transaction doesn't go through. They can't update the price, and what happens here, right, is that our price data starts to become stale, and so then all of a sudden you can't trust the pricing data that the oracle is delivering anymore, because you're not sure how fresh that data is.
So as it becomes more critical, it becomes harder to be reliable. That's interesting.
Exactly. And this is exactly probably, the network kind of blows up in terms of usage a lot when, some cataclysmic event happens in the blockchain world. Maybe ETH dropped a ton, or, maybe there's some crazy rally or something like that. And so these are the exact moments when people want to use the DAI credit system the most, right? They want to either, when the price is rallying, they want to open new CDPs and go margin long. When the price is crashing, they want to, pay or close out their CDPs or add some more collateral, to save their CDPs from getting liquidated. So that is not the kind of relationship you want between your reliability and when your users most need you. So that brings us on to kind of the present kind of architecture of oracles at MakerDAO. So Mariano and I have been working on this for quite some time, and we've made some really good progress. And we think that in the next couple months, we can get this deployed, possibly for the multi-collateral DAI launch, maybe just for not ETH, but the other assets that will be used, or maybe not at all for the launch. We'll see. It kind of depends on progress. But this new implementation kind of heavily centers on this thing called Secure Scuttlebutt. And what Secure Scuttlebutt is it's a peer-to-peer kind of gossip network protocol. So what does that mean? It means that if I am running a peer, and Rich is running a peer, and Sean is running a peer, and Jess is running a peer, and I'm connected to Rich, and Rich is connected to Jess and to Sean, I can post a message. And even though, and I want to send it to Jess, but I'm not connected to Jess. I'm only connected to Rich. But Rich is connected to Jess, so I can Rich, and he'll pass it on to Jess. That's kind of the gist of how a gossip network works, right? It manages to send messages to people you're not directly connected to.
One of the critical architecture points here, though, is that it also allows people to drop in and drop out of the network, right, and catch up. Is that the idea with Secure Scuttlebutt?
Sure. So that's definitely a benefit, right? So if one person goes offline, it's no big deal. But that was also very much a property in the previous implementation. But that's definitely a useful characteristic to have, and that's definitely why we want that in this iteration as well. And kind of the best layman's way that I can explain Secure Scuttlebutt is with an analogy, kind of subscribing it to Twitter. So on Twitter, you post a message, right? And people can retweet you, and people can follow you, and I think these terms work really well in describing Scuttlebutt. So each Scuttlebutt peer kind of has their own little Twitter kind of feed, right? Their own little Twitter profile feed. And if I was running one, I would publish messages, right? Messages containing price data on my feed. And anyone who is following me can then see those messages. So Rich, in the previous example, Rich is connected to me, and he can now see the messages that I've tweeted. And what Rich will do is then retweet that message on his feed. And now Jess and Sean, who are following Rich, see that tweet on Rich's feed, and now they retweet it on theirs. And so this is kind of how this whole message distribution scheme works. One thing about Scuttlebutt is that it's very, very similar to blockchains. So the messages are immutable, meaning that if you publish a message, you cannot publish a different message, right? That then previous message. You cannot delete a message, or you cannot edit a message. And this is because all of the messages kind of include a signature, and a signature is basically just the kind of describing what the data contents are of a message. And so if the signature changes, if you change any of the data, the signature will change, and everyone will see that the signature changed and will not let you make those changes. Similarly, because of all this kind of retweeting going on, it means everyone has a copy of the entire message stream. And this is very useful, for example, for auditing oracles. So if you have a message, from some oracle saying that the price of Ether is, only $20, well, you want to know what happened there, right? Why did that oracle say that? And you can look, how did that oracle come to that conclusion, right? So, going back, when it pulled the prices from Gemini, Coinbase, and Bittrex, what prices did it get, right? How did it arrive at this $20 ETH value metric? Was there a glitch in the Coinbase API that had all of the oracles kind of reporting $20 for that particular period? Or is it a kind of malicious attack? And so this provides us a lot more kind of flexibility in auditing. Another kind of thing is you can have built-in kind of auditing. This is something that's still kind of in development, but the essential idea is that all of these feeds, right, are constantly reading other people's messages, and they should be having close to the same data. And if someone else has data that is really, really off from what you have, you can send a challenge message to them, which is basically calling out someone's bad behavior. And what a oracle would do if it sees a challenge message issued to them is basically check their data all over again, just to make sure that their data is correct. And if it's incorrect, then they will respond to the challenge by invalidating the previous price message by posting a new message. And if they stand by their, if they don't, see anything wrong with their data, right, then they reject the challenge. And so this challenge message kind of thing can provide a lot of triggers for auditing and processes. Another big thing is kind of security. So all of the messages are signed with Ethereum keys. And so what that means is if I am Nick and I'm running an oracle, I have a particular Ethereum account, right, that is associated with me, with my identity. And so when I'm posting price messages, I need to prove to everyone that this is really me giving this data and that I vouch for this data. And the way I do that is by creating a signature with the data, the timestamp, and my private key. And so what we can do then is, the big benefit of this is now we only need one transaction to update the medianizer. Because so in the previous thing, what you can see is each broadcaster is doing one transaction to the smart contract, right? And so for n oracles, right, you have n transactions. In this new model, we don't need to have that anymore, because in Scuttlebutt, all of these price messages are being collected, right? And all of the signatures are being collected. And the median can, we already know kind of from the off-chain stuff, what the median is going to be. So we can already pre-sort the data, right? So the medianizer doesn't need to do this expensive operation of calling the data from the contracts. It doesn't need to do this expensive operation of sorting. It doesn't need to do this expensive operation of finding the median. So what we've done is just completely massively downgraded the cost of running these oracles. And not only is the cost lowered, but because the cost is so much lower, we can reduce the latency as well, right? Because we talked earlier that cost and latency kind of have this this inverse kind of relationship. Is because it only takes one transaction to update the medianizer, regardless of how many oracles we have, is that when the network is under heavy load, and what we were talking about earlier, and it's really hard to get your transaction to be processed, now we're much more reliable, because instead of needing 20 transactions to go through for 20 oracles, we just need one transaction to go through. So this architecture is looking a lot better. So the real goals of all of this was just to really reduce the costs. But one kind of side benefit that we get is that the medianizer, since it doesn't need to do sorting anymore, since it doesn't need to call all these external contracts anymore, the smart contracts, right, complexity goes way down, because we can remove like 99%. And that, smart contracts, security is kind of heavily based on kind of complexity. I would say the more complex you make something, the more likely it is you have some kind of bug. So anything we can do to simplify the business logic in a smart contract is much better for us.
Yeah, that's amazing, Nick. And this is like super fascinating, but we have 10 minutes left, sort of. So.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me just skip to the last slide then.
All right.
So real quick, I'll wrap up in a minute. So these are some other things we're looking at. We're looking at giving kind of incentive schemes and staking schemes for oracles, right? Because oracles are providing a valuable service. And as the DAI system scales to large amounts, right, they are going to have some kind of monetary incentive to be a bad actor. So we need to compensate them in some kind of dynamic way that is, kind of counter to whatever incentives they have to be bad. Another thing that we're looking at very closely is utilizing zero knowledge proofs. With zero knowledge, you can do some really cool stuff. Like you can say, this is the median, and here is a proof that says that this is actually the median that I calculated, and here's how I calculated it. And so essentially, what you can do is now you don't even need to send all of the pricing data anymore, which is now the kind of constraining factor in terms of gas costs. You can just send the median in this proof instead. So that would be really cool. Instead of having individual signatures from each ETH account, we can use threshold signatures instead. So then we only need to pass one signature. And the last thing we're looking at is running oracles on Intel SGX. Intel SGX is a kind of trusted execution environment, which means that it's a way for you to prove to a third party that you are running a particular, say, code. And so when a third party gives you data, if they can prove to you how they got that data, now you can trust the data that that party gave you.
This is absolutely amazing. I love the scuttlebutt stuff. There's a lot to unpack there. And I feel bad about rushing you because that last slide had a lot of like futuristic science in there. As soon as you get that stuff implemented, then I definitely want to have another conversation. This trusted computing environments, all of it. It's amazing.
All right. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I went way over.
I have a really quick question.
I had lots of time during the conference.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, are you guys thinking about, like, I know you guys do a lot of these kind of explanatory presentations. Have you thought about doing something like exactly what you're doing here, but the full-on presentation, and just have a series of those as a learning resource for, like, the public? Or do you feel like it's just a lot of stuff in development, and you feel like there's going to constantly be needing like a sort of a recasting of something like that?
I mean, it's not a bad idea. I think traditionally all of these talks are usually recorded at conferences, and then stuff like the subreddit, the different talks will get posted, and they'll kind of be viewed through that lens.
I like the idea, though. I think that, David, you're onto something. Like, if you guys should be doing these talks again for us specifically, and then we could host them on our own YouTube channel. So like a centralized resource instead of having to hunt down these hit and miss kind of conferences.
Yeah, it actually also makes the roadmap a lot clearer for the different like modules of like the Maker development team.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm gonna make a note of that. Cool, but we're crunched on time. So Sean, if you want to like,
I will.
9 minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's my goal. I do have a hard stop at 10. So let me share my screen. So mostly talk about ETHSanFrancicso. There's about 1,000 hackers, 120 projects submitted, and about 20 of those or more use DAI. I just posted a link to the dev post if you're interested in checking it out. You can sort by which project they submitted to, so you can find all the MakerDAO projects or many other companies there. And if you want to, they highlighted which ones won on their Twitter. I don't think they've actually released a list of their finalists, but they had 10 really good finalists, and a lot of those use DAI. One of them I'd like to highlight is one called CryptoPay, which is made by the same developers that won the ETH India Hackathon. It's basically a way to pay with, set up invoices and pay with any token, and it gets converted using the Kyber network to DAI, and the DAI is passed on to the vendor. Their smart contracts are actually really well written, and I know I'm going to use them as an example of things you can do with the CDPs and setting up DAI transfers, and it's just a really well written contracts. This is the website they made. So you basically can create a invoice link with certain costs associated with it and description, and that creates a URL. And when you go to that URL, you see a Pay Now button with 20 DAI, but say if you don't have DAI, you can say you have OMG tokens or something else, you can click OMG, and it does a conversion to how much that costs in OMG. And when you pay those tokens, they'll get converted to DAI and passed on to the merchant, which you can track in your dashboard there. Overall, just a really cool hack. Just the UI, the contracts, everything, just a really good project.
Yeah, that team never fails to impress. Can you, I don't want to miss this part though, because this is the part that really blew my mind. Can you talk briefly about the pay by loan thing? That's
so if Pay Now is more like a debit card, Pay by Loan is more like a credit card, where when you do Pay by Loan, it's going to ask you to open up a CDP with an excess amount of Ether compared to how much the t-shirt costs or whatever this costs. And when you do that, it basically creates a CDP on your behalf in one or two transactions, and then basically pulls out an amount of DAI necessary to pay the cost, and then now you have a CDP that you can interact with.
Yeah, it's earth-shattering a bit, I think. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but this gives people the opportunity to do decentralized, trustless financing of any purchase they want. So you could potentially buy a coffee and then finance that through a CDP, and then pay off your CDP over time, or wait for your collateral to appreciate or something. It's really an amazing idea. I love it.
Yeah, just making it super, super simple to open a CDP and use that aspect of it. Yeah, I agree. It's really, really cool. And their code to do that is all open source, and it's in here. One interesting to note from a development standpoint is that Kyber network's only on Ropsten, and our test network is on Kovan, so they had to kind of finagle like basically half of it works on Cove and half of it works on Robson. But when they deploy this to the mainnet, everything will work fine. So just an interesting thing to note. Lastly, real quick, just wanted to highlight the other ones that won. Lending Party worked with Bloom ID and Wire on off-ramping, basically doing deposits. You can read about that there. And the other cool one is called Robinbot, which is kind of a white hat hacker sort of thing where people have lost money on these hackathons where they thought something was on the testnet and they publish their GitHub and it's on mainnet, and if someone sees that, they can steal their money. So this is like basically constantly looking, using the GitHub API to find that information, and then it basically takes it and emails them saying, hey, we have your money and we converted to DAI on your behalf.
That's crazy. So it's a white hat bot that just sits there grinding through GitHub all day long looking for keys.
Yeah, that's their idea. That was their idea, and it worked.
That's hilarious. Are they monetizing it? Are they like giving you back 98% or something?
I'm not. I think they're giving it back, all of it. There's they actually won a similar prize at the ETH Buenos Aires Hackathon. They're like the Crypto Cup team. They're cool guys.
That's pretty hilarious, actually.
Yeah, I don't think they're monetizing it. I don't know if it's actually running live after this, but like the proof of concept works. Should follow up on that.
That's an amazing concept. Same thing to test contracts. So if they find an exploit, they can seize all the cash and then give it back for a reasonable cut.
Yeah, I think the idea is really cool, and it could be expanded upon to almost do like smart contract auditing.
But if the competition gears up, then you'd have competing Robin Hoods trying to steal cash before the other one could steal the cash. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, and only a couple minutes left, but the last one to highlight is one very similar to CryptoPay, not quite as polished. It's called StablePay, and they use 0x to do, instead of using Kyber Network, they use 0x to do their transformations, but it's still, you can pay with any token, and then it would be transferred, or it would be converted using 0x and transferred on as DAI to someone.
Awesome. It's nice to see so many people actually interested or figuring out that a viable use case is trying to figure out how people can actually spend DAI for things, which shows that the market's kind of maturing a bit. It's not just proof of concepts, it's how do we actually spend this stuff.
Yeah, and that was all I really wanted to show in this call. Yeah, Epicenter, SF, and our Jess is here with me. Our happy hours yesterday, or Sunday and yesterday, went very well. They're pretty packed, and people are excited.
All right, that's amazing. Thanks for the demo, and also I think we should wrap it up. So thanks, Nick, for your presentation, and I'm looking forward to the future demo of your presentation. So keep us up to date on that. Thanks from Mariano, Jess, and Lenka, and everybody else who joined. I'll be posting this to YouTube soon. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye everybody.
Bye guys.
Bye everybody.